What is up, everybody? I am here with Mason Miller, a pitcher I recently called the future of pitching. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but I did.
I did see the video. Yeah.
Yeah, that was sick. How are you doing, Mason?
I'm doing well, Rob. Appreciate you having me on. It's an honor.
Oh, dude, it's a pleasure to have you, man. Like you've just, I don't know, you caught my radar. I turned on an A's game and I was like, I knew about your reputation, but then seeing it almost firsthand, I guess, through my computer, it was absolutely electric. So I was like, I got to dig further into this, dude. And you've got a fantastic story. So we'll give everybody the background of what made Mason Miller, and your unique path to the major leagues, and then go over some pitch grips and all fun stuff like that. Maybe talk about some mechanics. But you did not have a traditional path to the major leagues, starting out in a D3 and kind of sucking like your first year. I mean, I don't mean to say that, but now where you are, it's kind of fair, right?
No, that for sure. The first couple of years were, I had my hot stretches, cold stretches. I threw out of the pen for my freshman year. So, down the stretch, I was throwing pretty well. But yeah, overall, first couple of years in college, major struggle.
Yeah. And for folks that don't know, like D3 means you weren't necessarily highly recruited. You were this guy that probably showed a lot of promise, and then you can tell the story, but from what I read, you were like going for an internship, and they made you take some tests, and you found out. Well, you can go into it.
Yeah. So after my sophomore year, I was planning to do an internship that summer with a health network in Pittsburgh. So I had to take a drug test to, just assure that I was a good guy for the job. But anyway, I took that test, and that was when they discovered my blood sugar levels were extremely high. So they like tested my sample and found it through that route. But yeah, so that's how I ended up getting diagnosed, sent me to the ER and everything. Type 1 diabetes diagnosis, which was, pretty shocking for me. So it wasn't something that I knew a lot about at all. Everybody's heard of diabetes, but I really didn't know the differentiation between type 1 and type 2. So definitely shocking, but getting everything sorted out health-wise was, even outside of baseball, just the quality of life for me was, night and day.
So for folks out there, what did it feel like while you had it? Like, was it low energy? I help everybody understand the symptoms that you were going through and kind of why it impacted you so much.
Yeah. I mean, the first, most noticeable symptom for me was that I lost some weight. And that was because, I was actually trying to gain weight. So I was coming into college, I was a wiry kid, still 6'5", and, I could throw the ball right, mid to upper 80s. So everybody was like, just, man, put on some weight and, you'll get there. So that was what I was trying to do. And I was eating everything in sight, and I was losing weight. I ended up losing like 25 pounds that sophomore year. So that was the first thing I noticed. And then I was thirsty like all the time. I'd mix up like a 2-liter, pitcher of Kool-Aid and just take the whole pitcher with me over to the couch and sit there and drink it. And I just could not quench that thirst. So obviously I had to go to the bathroom a ton with how much fluids I was drinking. But yeah, those were like the telltale major symptoms of type 1 diabetes.
And your teammates called you like Fungo or something like that. Was that true?
Yeah, that was the nickname I got my freshman year, which, I was actually pretty cool, I thought.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's a great nickname.
I thought it described me well. And freshman year, I was like probably a $175. So at that point, it wasn't like, I didn't look sickly. But after I lost 25 pounds and, we went to Florida for our spring trip, and there's a picture of us like in a hot tub, all the guys. And I'm like, you can like see the bones in my back, and like looking back on that, I was just like, man, that just doesn't look right at all. So, in hindsight, there's definitely something that was going on.
But normally you would think, oh, I just have a high metabolism, I just got to eat more or something. You wouldn't naturally think it was diabetes that was causing that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I'd looked up the symptoms too, because you just punch your symptoms into Google, and then your Dr. Google, so you can figure it out. And diabetes did pop up, and I was just like, man, that can't be me, like, 'cause I always just figured diabetes was, something you develop later in life. And I didn't really have any history of diabetes in my family either. So I just assumed that really couldn't be me. And I was planning to get some blood work done at the end of that school year, because I knew something was up, but we ended up not even getting there. So, I was fortunate to have it discovered when I did, and, get everything back on track.
See, most folks think drug tests suck, and this drug test actually may have saved your life and certainly created a whole pitching career.
It did, yeah. I mean, they're a nuisance no matter how you look at it, especially now with random drug tests all the time, But definitely fortunate with that one for sure.
So help me, like growing up, did you want to be was that something that was driving you? You wanted to be a baseball player? Do you want to go to school and get an education and you were like, this is going to be it and I'm going to just go on? Was it a dream to be an MLB pitcher?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure if you look back, my mom had me write in journals when I was a kid. It was like, get my writing in. I'm sure in there somewhere I wrote that my dream was to be an MLB player. And that dream definitely faded through like probably my teenage years. I was a good player, obviously good enough to play past high school, but even through high school, I probably wouldn't even describe myself as the best player on my team or anything like that. I think I was a solid pitcher and, good enough I had a D2 offer on the table, but really when I got to college, I wanted to go play, and I knew if I went the D2 route, it would be something that I'd have to work for to get onto the field, maybe my sophomore or junior year. So I ended up choosing the D3 route and went to Waynesburg because I knew I could compete and play my freshman year. I might not be as a starting pitcher, but, I'd get a chance to be on the field and, do what I love, which was playing baseball.
Did things like once you got your diabetes under control, did things automatically click? Like were your mechanics worked out because you were almost undersized at 6'5" and 150, trying to throw as hard as you could. And then once you gained that weight, the velocity and everything came with it? Or were there mechanical things that you fixed that helped you throw harder?
I really didn't consciously change anything. Through the years, I've definitely cleaned some stuff up for sure. And just, being able to throw the ball harder than most guys in D3, even during my freshman year, I was probably one of the harder throwers in our conference. That affords you to get away with a lot more mistakes than if you're throwing a little slower. So I think, as I progressed through levels, that was when I had to kind of clean some things up to be able to, if I'm going away with the fastball, that's where it's going to be, and not, missing in or missing middle or, places you can get hurt.
What are the big cues that you have, like personally, for mechanics? Is it a lower half thing? Is it arm? Like different people focus on different things.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it the whole like, is it just syncing up everything up?
I mean, it's definitely syncing everything up. I mean, you obviously have different cues. For me, I try to stay over the rubber a little longer because I tend to ride the slope. Sometimes I get ahead of myself and my arm ends up being a little late. I notice that more in like low effort bullpens than I do in games. So I have a super quick arm. Obviously, that's where a lot of my velocity comes from. So that kind of lets me catch up if I'm a little late with my upper half. And I think there's something to be said for, that late arm action, although maybe it's not, the healthiest thing in terms of like our medical staff, but, that's also what makes me unique and, gave me this great opportunity. So I think it's a balance of, you don't want to be too late, but, just kind of managing that level of synchronization and, lower level settings.
So you make a great point, and it's one of those things that people always talk, well, this is going to create more injuries. Number one, I'm not confident that anybody really has the magic cues on what creates, non-injury mechanics versus ones that are likely to be injured. But number two, it makes you. Like one of the reasons why you're as successful as you are is your ability to throw hard. And if you take all that stuff away, does that remove your effectiveness? I think there's always that tension.
Yeah, there's a trade-off for sure. I mean, obviously that's their jobs to keep you healthy. So, I get it. And I've been working to balance that, especially through, I spent a lot of time last year rehabbing my shoulder, but just learning different things about my body. And, it's not necessarily a cookie cutter thing for everybody where it's like, this is the path to recovery. You got to kind of figure things out and try different things, see what works, what doesn't, what you need sometimes and not other times. So
Are you a big weight room dude?
Yeah, I like to get after it in there for sure. I've had to learn that, in season's not always the best time to do that. But during the off seasons, and that's obviously been a huge part of my journey. Is putting on weight is one thing, but making a good healthy weight is another thing. So, I think the first 30 or 40 pounds I got after I got diagnosed, that was just natural, like getting back to like a healthy kind of weight. And then, the next 40 or 50 pounds that I got after that, I earned those for sure.
Now you went from, again, D3, shaping everything up, getting everything under control, to being a Friday night guy, right? For Gardner Webb.
Mhm.
What was that like? Like, what was making that jump like for you? Was it like, holy cow, this is big time now? What was your mindset?
I mean, I going into that, I didn't know what the transition was going to be like from D3 to D1. I went out my junior year and dominated at Waynesburg, and then senior year I made two starts and threw two complete games before COVID got shut down. So I knew I was dominating at the level I was at, but making that jump, you know, you just look at it like D3, D2, D1, I'm essentially skipping a level to go there. And I definitely had my reservations. I was confident in what I could do, but I didn't know how that was going to translate. Just against better competition and different location, where I wasn't as comfortable. But coming into that fall, we had a lot of older guys on the team. We kind of gelled pretty well. And I threw really well that fall against our guys, and I knew we had a good team. So I think that gave me a lot of confidence coming into spring.
You think the inner squads were when you knew that you totally belonged and you're gonna be okay when you
Yeah. I always had like some control issues, and I think some of that in D3 was just some guys went up there with a plan that they weren't hacking at all. It's like, well, he's a little wild, so maybe he'll walk me. But the guys were swinging in those inter squad games, and that helped me a lot. I was making good pitches. Some of them may not have been in the zone, but I think I had something crazy like one walk in 20 innings or something, which was just unheard of for me. So, I felt really good about where my stuff was at, and I knew it was playing well against my teammates. So, when I went out and threw well those first couple starts in the spring, I was feeling pretty confident, about any prospects past, that season.
was there any one game, one team you played against that you were like, okay, now I know I've got it. It's all coming together.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's two really. I think it was our second or third weekend we played Georgia, which was a big game for us, being a mid-major school and Georgia being in the SEC. And I came to find out after the game that I was tipping my slider. Because I've always been like a strikeout guy, and I went 6 innings that game and I had 0 strikeouts, and it's just like they weren't swinging and missing on anything. So like during the game, I was like, man, these guys are just on my stuff. They're pretty good, and I still got through 6. I think they got me for 1 or 2 runs in the 5th and 6th innings, but I really couldn't command my slider that day either. But the slider was the pitch I was tipping. So I was like my glove. I would like point my finger up every time I went to throw my slider, which I guess is a pretty common tip.
Yeah.
Um,
That's why they have
but
that little hood on the glove, right? Like the little
I got one now. Yeah, the rest of that year I had my finger tucked in, and then that was one of the first things I did when I got my next glove, was made sure it had that hood on there. But that game and then the next one, I think I took a no-hitter into the 6th against the top team in our conference. So those two, I was feeling pretty good.
Well, I don't know if you heard the story, but apparently Randy Johnson tipped his slider his entire career. He like closed his glove more when he wanted to throw I think it was his slider he tipped that way, or maybe it was, but he tipped his entire career. And Eduardo Perez told him that after he was done, like he met him up at the Hall of Fame and was like, dude, and Randy Johnson said, why did you do so well against me? He's like, you were tipping your pitches the entire time. So like there's something said, once you figured it out, like you're going to be dangerous, like being able to
Yeah.
surprise people with a slider.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's that's such a crazy thing to think about, that he had such a dominant career and, potentially was tipping pitches his whole career like that.
It's amazing. Is there anybody that you modeled yourself after? I mean, you're a bigger dude. Is there a pitcher that you said, I want to be that guy, either growing up or even now, like guys that you're looking at going, I hope I can be that guy?
When I was growing up, being from Pittsburgh, I was a big Pirates fan, which through a lot of those years was pretty rough. But how gorgeous the stadium is and everything, I still enjoyed going
It's a
down
great
there and,
stadium.
watching the guys play. They played the Cardinals a lot, and I was a big Albert Pujols fan growing up too. So I ended up going to a lot of those games. So I got to see Chris Carpenter and Wainwright younger in their careers, which was really cool. Got to see Garrett Cole when he was on the Pirates. Different pitcher than he is now, but still pretty electric to watch. And I mean, now, as far as who I model myself after, I think it's fair to say that I'm pretty unique as to who I am. I like to watch other guys. Still Garrett Cole, being a high velocity guy. Strider's great to watch. There's a lot of dominant pitchers out there today, and I think I like watching dominant pitching. That's probably what I'd say.
You and me both. I love that
Yeah.
too. What's Fuji like on the team? Like he seems to be a little bit of a character, no?
Yeah, no, I I didn't really get to know him much in spring training, and I think he's settled in a lot. But he's definitely a fun guy. He likes to laugh and joke around with the guys. And I think just him getting more comfortable with everybody here, and just being over here in the States has been really good for him. I think he's really close out there on the mound too. And I think maybe getting back to the bullpen for him is going to be good, something that he's a little bit more comfortable with over the past couple of years. But yeah, his stuff's electric. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think it's one of those things that's really tough. And as a younger pitcher, especially, but or someone trying to make his way just new to the United States, but fans don't have a lot of patience, but you need to have patience to develop. And you're going to learn from all the bumps in the road. And not everybody's, goes like this and just gets good right away. Sometimes it's like, most of the time it's like that. Like you
Yeah.
improve, then you have a crappy outing. And it's hard to have like fans, it's hard to make them understand that. Even players like that, you get frustrated, but
Yeah.
it isn't linear.
Yeah, I mean, you go out there and you want to do well every time you're out there, and especially, I'm sure him being here, something that he's probably dreamed about for a while. I'm sure he's pressing to do well too, and so those tough starts. I mean, he's flashed good in probably about every single outing, and it's hard to take the good when you sit and think about the bad, because that kind of it's a hard thing to do, but taking that good and carrying that instead of worrying about the ways you've struggled and trying not to repeat those. That's something I've tried to work on a lot, but it's definitely not an easy thing.
Yeah, let's talk about the mental game, because I think that that's a big thing. And to me, some of your struggles early on, just what you've been through in life, probably helps you down the road with saying, I've overcome this, I've overcome this. Now you're faced with other obstacles that you can overcome. But what is your mental approach? And do you think that your unique career path has kind of helped you?
I mean, I think it's fair to say it's definitely helped me. I've been through a lot of different things, and I don't I know it's an abnormal, path to where I am, but for me, that's the only thing I've known. So, just through the years, taking it one year at a time, one step at a time has been really good for me. And now that I'm here, it's almost like I have to, change that a little bit. Cause now I'm not trying to get somewhere. I'm here, and now it's like, you got to stay. Um, so I think just changing my mindset from, I'm not trying to get somewhere, but I'm trying to, dominate this level and, can make that consistency and, change those things that I need to change, and developing game plans and, things like that, that I think that's probably the biggest thing that I haven't had a lot of experience with, as just like, knowing I'm going out and facing these guys, I'm going to see them 3 times, and, developing those plans, just because a lot of my outings have been short and things like that. But, as far as the mindset goes, I've always been pushing to the next spot and, seeing if my stuff's going to play there. And each time it has. So I think that's been good for me to carry that confidence and test that confidence along the way too.
Well, there is no other next spot now. Like you can't go to the intergalactic. Like I did actually hint at that. Like there needs to be another league for this guy stuff wise, because that's what jumped out at me is like it's absolutely unfair when your stuff is clicking. Like it's unique, and it's overpowering. And, you know, it's one of those things that consistently doing that, it's always going to play. And it's almost like it's a little unfair for hitters at some point. Do you feel
Yeah,
bad?
I actually just had no, I don't feel bad. I want to my
You
job
shouldn't
is to
feel
make
bad.
them look bad. But
Exactly.
I actually just had a conversation with a manager, Kotze, about, you know, my stuff and just being in the zone. You know, don't try and make the perfect pitch. You know, make good pitches, and you know, keep making good pitches, and then, you know, the great stuff will come. You know, be good for a while, and then you'll be great. So
Yeah, that's a great point, because I know the Rays strategy, and I talked to Glass now about this, is throw your best stuff in the zone and don't think too much. Like everybody's told you growing up, like major league guys, oh, they're going to hit anything over the plate. You got to hit your spots. You got to do this. When your stuff is that good, it's almost like let it eat, and, you know, throw in these general zones, but it's about your stuff and not about, you know, micro targeting things.
mhm. Yeah, and I definitely felt like, you know, when I came up, I did have to be a little bit more fine because, you know, that's just the fact of the matter. You're facing the best of the best. So you want to be at your best, you know, every single pitch. But, you know, thinking more about it, you know, would I rather get beat on my best pitch in the zone and the guy takes me yard, or would I rather, you know, take a guy through an 8 pitch at bat, walk him, you know, they move him over, next guy has another great at bat, and then I'm 23 pitches through an inning and they, you know, squeak a run out. But then that's that's 25 less pitches that you know, I have to go. And especially being at the point where I am, where I'm kind of limited as far as how many pitches they're going to run me out there and ups and all that. You know, that's definitely something I'm challenging myself to do, you know, moving forward, is be efficient, you know, give a guy my best stuff early in counts, you know, go right at him. And, you know, whatever happens, happens, but, you know, I'll have more bullets. So, you know, I'll be on to the next guy.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I was just watching Strider struggle with that today. He did the same thing, like, you know, 30 something pitch first inning with guys just fouling stuff off, and, you know, it shortens your outing, and you don't get to show off as much. Um, and he's one of those guys that has learned that. Like, he will fill up the zone generally now, and still was struggling that, like, every day.
Yeah.
You know, you're pitching against the best. You're going to deal with that some days.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to have your best every single day out. That's just the fact of it. But, you know, it's almost like tricking yourself into believing you do when you don't,
It,
and still
fake it till you
compete.
make it. That's right. Exactly. Did you like getting drafted? What was that like? Like, what was the reaction? Did you feel like that was the goal, was to get drafted? You know, you set these goals, get drafted, and then see how far I can make it, or you like, this is one step further to my dream of playing in the major leagues?
Well, really, after COVID, and I decided to go back for my 5th year at Gardner Webb, that was when I was kind of all in on baseball. And, you know, I really, obviously the goal is to make it to the big leagues, always is. Um, as far as how realistic that was, I really had no idea. But, you know, going all in on baseball, that was, you know, I was selling out to get drafted. That was the goal. You know, it's always about that next goal, you know, not trying to get too far ahead of yourself. But when I went there, that was my goal, was to get drafted. And then, you know, it was almost a relief after that happened, because it really wasn't that big of a gamble, but, you know, it felt like a huge, like taking a chance on it for me, just because of how, you know, unproven my stuff was, and, you know, not playing at that level before, and then being an older guy, and then there's the, you know, are they going to take a chance on the older guy and all that. So, you know, I kind of put all those fears to rest as the season unfolded and how well I was throwing the ball. But yeah, that once I got drafted, it was like, all right, not I've made it, but, you know, I made the next step. And, you know, I got to throw a couple innings that fall in instructs and everything, so that was good. And then I was throwing the ball really well in spring of 2022 last year. And that was when I went down with a shoulder injury at the end of spring training. But, you know, I think it was in that short period of time I was able to convince myself that, yeah, I do belong. And, you know, I was just excited to get back out there.
Well, it became clear that you didn't belong when you were in the minor leagues and just destroying people. Like, your stats are insane looking at them. Like, even command wise, it all clicked for you too. Like they could not keep you down. Was that your thought process? Like, I'm going to show them that I belong and I'm going to just, or was it just like it all just happened, command stuff, everything just all clicked?
Yeah, I mean, I think things definitely clicked. I learned a lot last year about myself, what I need to be able to bring my best stuff each time out. Routines, recovery, all that. And I think it came together in the fall league for sure, and that gave me a lot of confidence coming into this year. And like I said earlier, being in the zone and showing my best stuff, that's kind of just been my goal, is like, I'm going to come at you until you show me that I need to do something different. And until until the first inning against the Angels, I really hadn't encountered a lot of adversity from batters just barreling my stuff. But another adjustment to be made, and I'm ready to do that.
Well, I was really impressed by that too, and I wanted to touch on a few at bats. One of them, let's go back to you faced Patrick Wisdom, and it was the most unfair at bat I've seen all year. Like, it was making a solid pro hitter look like he didn't have any idea what he was doing. It was unbelievably overpowering. Did you feel any of that up there? Like, oh boy, like my stuff hitting 102, 102, some of them were sinking. You were throwing like just insane stuff that he seemed lucky to get a bat on the ball to foul anything off.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the guys I had circled in my pre-report that had been swinging it. So, I wanted to be cautious with him for sure, but he helped me. I know the video you put together, I'll talk about that one, the slider that he chased. I think he helped me out on that one. That one wasn't close, but I think a lot of guys have been sitting fastball on me, so that being able to flip a slider in there was really good. But I'd try not to look at the board and check my velo, because I don't want to sit there and chase velo. I want to execute my pitches. So I really didn't know how hard it was coming out. Those were actually my hardest pitches of my career during that at bat. So to look back and reflect on that, and see what I was able to do to a guy that's a big leaguer and a pretty solid one at that point, it's pretty awesome for me.
Yeah, I think that opened up everybody's eyes when they saw that. Like, oh my God, the level of overmatchedness, that's not a word, but I'm going to make it a word, was incredible for a guy that's just starting out, just throwing insane stuff. But I also wanted to touch on the Angels game, where, yeah, it was struggling a little bit originally, but you also K'd both Trout and Ohtani. Number one, is it surreal to be facing those guys? And number two, what did that feel like?
I mean, it definitely is. I think the Cubs have a lot of guys in their lineup, and I think it was more so that it was just my debut, and I was just kind of like a little scattered, taking it all in, and not really comprehending exactly what was going on. But for me, when Trout stepped into the box for his first AB in the first game, or not the first game, the second game for me was that was kind of eye-opening. Like, yeah, this is happening.
This is Mike Trout, and it's me.
This is Mike Trout, one of the best hitters of all time, and here I am throwing against him. And he got me and stuck it down the right field line there with 2 strikes. But before that, I put one past him, and I was like, man, that's by Mike Trout, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that feeling. And I remember the first hit that the hit that Trout had. It was caught by a guy in a Mike Trout jersey too, which was kind of cool. But then Kane him, and I remember Ohtani's face after you K'd him too. I think it was a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, maybe something like that. And it just looked awkward. It looked like you just beat him on it. And doing that, like, as a young pitcher, I mean, what kind of confidence does that give you for future games?
I mean, especially after that first inning, being able to bounce back the way I did was super, super helpful for my, just mental state and confidence there. I know my stuff's great, and I'm gonna bring it every week, but I know those guys are especially super talented too. So sometimes I might get beat, but being able to stay in that game after that long first inning and come back in the second inning, especially at bat against Ohtani, because that was, I think, 8 pitches maybe. I came in for strike 2 on him, and he had like a similar take. And then I think I came right back with 100, and he fouled that off. And I was like, all right, he's got to be looking in there now that I've came in there twice. And him being as dangerous as he is, I really didn't want to get beat. So I was like, all right, change up away, fastball away, tried to backdoor cutter, and he's just fouling everything off. I probably shouldn't have waited as long as I did to come back in there, but I felt like after I had him looking out over the plate, I know that's where he can spoil a lot of pitches. So I was like, I'm going to come back in and hopefully I can just jam him if he swings at it, get it in play. But I guess he really was looking out over still, and I think I probably had a little bit of comeback on that one too. And the way he took it, that was pretty sweet.
I thought so. Like so to me, I think I made a point in my video that day on YouTube that these are the little moments that help a young pitcher like you, like struggling in the first inning or getting hit a little bit. That's going to happen to everybody. It's how you react to that that shows what you're made of and gives you something to build on. And to me, that was such a big inning for you. And I'm glad to hear kind of that you felt it a little bit as well. I was trying to put myself in your shoes.
Yeah. Well, even so, for the fact that if I exit the game in that first inning or something like that, that just puts a lot of stress on our bullpen too. And our guys have been working out there. A lot of our starters haven't been able to get super deep into games. So just to eat those next 3 innings, not only just for myself and my confidence, but for those guys too, that meant a lot to me too.
What has the city felt about you? Like, do you get recognized and stuff? Or is it?
No, not really. I mean, I came up here, started that day game, and then we went on the road. So I've only really been here, I guess, for 3 or 4 days total.
Well, we're gonna get you all recognized. Like now, everybody's gonna.
Yeah, we'll see someday, right? But yeah, at the games and stuff, it's been great. I mean, I've signed for some fans, and met a lot of guys and girls in the stands that know who I am, and that's pretty cool because I remember especially the kids. They had like little league day yesterday, and they were walking around the field before the game, and I just remember being in their shoes and how big of a deal that was to be on the field, see players, all that. So I don't ever want to forget that feeling that I had as a kid and how much that meant to me. And now that the shoe's on the other foot and I'm in that situation that I can have that sort of impact on a kid is that's one of the coolest things about it, honestly.
I remember telling my son went to all these Georgia Tech games as a kid and then eventually played at Georgia Tech. And it was the same thing. It's like, I get to give autographs and stuff. And I'm going to do that. Like, cause he remembered as a kid yelling at, Matt Wieters back in the day, hey, can you sign my thing? And it's great when people can remember and pay it forward. Cause someday those little kids, they want to be you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's the wheel of life, I guess. Right.
Exactly.
But I think I got blessed with a pretty awesome opportunity, and I'm going to soak it up every single day I'm here. That's for sure.
I'm sure your parents are pretty fired up too.
Yeah, my parents are happy too. They never were like super big into sports or anything. Oh, people would always ask them like, "Are you like a baseball fan?" And they were like, "We're just fans of Mason." And I
It's good
think
they're
it's
not
cool.
fans. They weren't
through
fans
the
of you,
years.
of course.
Yeah, that would be so tough, wouldn't it? But it's been cool through the years to see them grow and learn the game and things like that, and be invested in it. So it's awesome for me, and I'm super blessed to have them supporting me through every single step of the journey I've been on.
That's fantastic. Let's go over some pitch grips because I am curious, and I just again, it's part of my thing about paying everything forward. Is I want people to be able to learn from the best and not have to pay money and stuff. Like I think
Sure.
baseball shouldn't be a rich kid sport. So let's go figure out what makes you you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've followed a lot of your stuff for a while, so I've always been into this kind of thing and just learning, like, not even so the grips. There's only so many ways you can hold the ball, right? But just kind of what you're thinking through it. And we'll start with the four seam fastballs, pretty traditional grip. I have the horseshoe on the outside here. I actually flipped the ball around about a year and a half ago because I used to throw it with the horseshoe in. And this was through my fifth year at Gardner Webb, and before, I think I still threw it like that after the draft too. But I was getting a lot of bunched fastballs, like 14 and 14, 12 and 14, things like that. And so it was still coming out at 100, but a lot of guys were fouling off and being able to get to it. And I didn't spin it around consciously to like change my metrics. It just suddenly one day felt super uncomfortable in my hand. I was like, well, I'm going to try it the other way. And I kind of like how the way the seam sits, my middle finger being longer, I feel like it just lines up more naturally this way. I don't know why I felt comfortable throwing it the other way for so long, but that's kind of where I'm at now, and I feel like I can get a good carry off of it. I think I haven't looked at my metrics recently because going from Midland to Vegas, metrics are all screwed up in Vegas. But I think my carry's been 16, 17 range pretty consistently, with probably around eight horizontal, which is really good. I was getting a lot more swing and miss and carry on my fastball, which was really good for me.
And just from flipping the ball around, because it is natural. I know a lot of guys do that because the way the seam goes up, it just lets you ride the seam maybe a little longer, that you're getting a little bit more spin on it.
Yeah, and I mean, even just the way it, I guess, comes off, this way I might just roll a little bit more. My tilt was lower. I was thinking, like we were talking about it, my best fastball was around 1 o'clock, but for whatever reason, when it came out naturally, I was throwing it more at like 1:30 a lot of the time.
Interesting.
Even just that small difference was killing so much of my vertical break. So it wasn't, like I said, wasn't like a conscious change to chase the metrics. I was curious how it was going to match up, and it really did help. But for whatever reason, it just felt so much more comfortable this way. So that's where I'm at with that one. And then my slider, just a pretty traditional slider grip here. Take it, grip it over the two seam here. Just not really trying to choke it or anything, but I definitely want to feel a lot of seam with my middle finger here. And I'm from like a 3/4 slot more, so I guess it could potentially be a curveball grip too, but
yeah,
really get a ball to go down very much. Like I throw across and it sweeps on me a little bit. But I throw it hard enough that I think it's still, I don't know if they read it as a slider or it's just because I call it a slider. That's what they make it. But
I think they read it as a slider. I seem to remember that. Interesting. Have you explored, because the two seam grip is one of the keys to a sweeper as well. It's just the rotation of it. If it rotates exactly right, the seams will make the ball just take off a ton.
Yeah, all that stuff's so interesting to like look at and think about. And we have a lot of guys that throw the two seam sweeper, and I've tried it and I can't figure out the trick to it. So I'm still just over the top. But
it's an off-season thing. Worried about it off-season.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what the off season's for.
Yeah.
I think my slider really, when it's at its best, rivals my fastball too. But, it's hard to say that, your fastball's not your best pitch when I throw it as hard as I do. But I think my slider's pretty solid too. And then really recently, actually, I started throwing cutter. And that one I just take my four seam grip and I rotate it a quarter turn and twist it a little bit. So I'm kind of just off the four seam grip, I guess my old four seam grip with the horseshoe in, and then I just twist the ball a little bit so that I'm kind of getting it to come off like this.
Gotcha. And it's purposefully, are you riding the seam a little bit longer to get it to cut?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to like break it off or anything. I'm just trying to preset my wrist a little bit to that plane, just inside 12. Some of them, I honestly try to throw it a little different to lefties than I do righties. I want it to be, harder and flat, and maybe even have a little bit more carry to a lefty up and in, and then to a righty, just try to make it a little bigger because I've been running it into some righties barrels where it's just not moving quite enough.
Yep.
So trying to, just preset a little harder and, get it to have a little bit more bite to it, almost like a harder slider. Just to avoid them being able to slap it over like second baseman's head.
So this is one of the fun things because you get to explore. I mean, as a young pitcher, there are going to be things that you're going to pick up either from teammates or just trying different things. And it sounds like you're experimenting a tiny bit and learning from these times where you do run into a barrel like, oh, I need a pitch that actually doesn't do what I just did.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the name of the game, is being able to, make adjustments, adapt to, things you're seeing. And that's the only way you're going to find a pitch that works for you, is trying it, and I've had tons of different grips through the years. And like I told you with the fastball, like just that minor change, took my fastball to the next level. So, I think it's key to keep trying different things and listen. I think you can learn something from everybody.
Now your velo on your cutter is kind of crazy high too. I think they were cutters. I'm assuming they were when I saw some 97s or so. And it definitely looked like a cutter to me. Is that generally where your cutter can top out at, or is it?
Yeah. I think 90, 97. I think some of the bad ones that I don't really cut as much, but they still read as cutters. I think 98 has been the highest I've gotten it. But yeah, I'm trying to throw it hard. I want it to be like between my fastball and my slider, and then my changeups around like 91. So just trying to set up different like velocities there has been my goal.
Does it sound stupid saying your changeup's 91 after your long, like, oh yeah, my changeup's 91, and guys are loving, like, you've been through the journey. The people are like, I hit 90, this is awesome, and they're like, oh yeah, that's my changeup, dude.
Yeah, a lot of guys get pissed off, and not really. They like to joke with me about it. They're like, changeup's my fastball.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's 10 off my fastball, which I think is a
Oh no,
decent,
it's great.
split. I'd
So,
like, if I can get it a little slower, I think it would help with the movement. But yeah, I've been gripping it like Sandy's grip. I saw he was throwing it that way during my rehab, and I just started playing catch with it, because the changeup's never been a pitch I've been able to master. So it's just taking it, you grab it and then just turn it so you have it over this seam right here. You're just trying to get it to come out and spin, honestly, like a sinker. Like you said, that it's a lot of guys' fastballs, like 91, 92 is like a pretty common sinker velocity. So if I can just get my changeup to spin like that, and then the fact that I have more fingers on the ball is going to kill some of my spin, so I'll get a little bit more bottom to it. For me now, it's just commanding it consistently, being able to throw the one that's a strike and then the one that's a chase. Right now it's like I got the chase one down, the one that bounces, but I got to show it first before a guy's going to swing it.
Exactly. So it looked like like it comes off almost like a one seam sinker.
Yeah, that's my goal.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. I don't pronate super well, so I'm just trying to get it to get that spin, and then just let the spin do the work for me as far as the movement goes.
Yeah, I was going to ask that because a lot of guys that supinate well can throw good sliders and cutters. Going the other way is kind of tough. It's rare to have somebody that can do both.
Yeah.
And
I'm definitely supination is my strength. Pronation, not so much.
Have you thought about a splitter at all? Maybe, like, I mean, it's.
Dude, I wish I could throw a splitter. I've tried so many different ways, but my fingers just don't. That's max split for me, so I can't get it. If I really tried, I could probably like preset something and grip it for every single pitch. But yeah, I mean, I've got 3 good pitches, and the changeup's still work in progress. But maybe someday I'll figure it out.
I mean, I know if Fuji can help on the splitter, but it is one of those things that if you
just Fuji grips it, and it's just like, there you go. Here's a 95-mile-an-hour splitter.
Yeah, he does have insane stuff, as do you, and it also shows you that not everybody's the same. You can't cookie cutter you to throw a splitter or him to throw a changeup or whatever. You got to do you.
Yeah, and that's part of the like all the scouting and stuff is, you know, you see what a hitter's strength and stuff and all that is. Like their zones they like, but you know, you also got to stick to what you do well. And you know, it's your best versus their best sometimes, and you got to trust your stuff to beat a guy. So that's been my balance too, is like how much do I pitch to my strengths versus, you know, attack a guy's weakness.
Yeah, and that's another tough thing. Again, learning process, but your stuff is so electric. I would imagine pitching to your strengths are gonna work out better than not for almost
Yeah,
everybody.
I think I'd rather get beat with my strength on his strength than not my best pitch against not his best spot.
Yeah, if someone goes yard off 102, that's
It's going to happen at some
yeah,
point. Yeah.
right. Oh, it absolutely will.
If I flip my changeup in there and somebody takes it, I'm gonna be like, man, that was my fourth pitch. Why, like, I should have just thrown something else. But you know, like you can't play that game either. You be convicted in every single pitch you throw, no matter if it's your best pitch or your worst pitch. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last, like, what are your goals? What do you think? Do you set goals? Is it something like, hey, I want to be a Cy Young Award winner. I want to be an All-Star. I want to be like, or is it just every day get better and eventually it takes care of itself?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a goal setter, but those goals have always been to the next spot. You know, it's like get drafted, get promoted, make the big leagues. And you know, I've knocked those down in pretty quick fashion. So now that's part of the adjustment of, you know, I'm not chasing to get somewhere per se, you know, but obviously to be the best of the best is the goal. That's why we all do it as competitors. So right now I'd say it's just finding my best stuff and getting out there and throwing good start after good start. And then after that, I think that's when you can start talking about, you know, all-star games, you know, awards and different things like that. But right now the goal is just to bring my best stuff, give my team a chance to win. And, you know, I think that's a good place to start.
Well, dude, I love watching you throw. I mean, you're one of those guys. You've made the list so quickly of guys that I have to watch when they're out on the bump, because what I love is somebody when I'm watching them, I may not have seen that before. And you've already provided some of those times. I mean, the wisdom at bat was one, but just the Ohtani Trout stuff and just the mix of velo and just pure stuff. I think everybody should be a fan of you, watch your outings, and watch you grow. It's a great time to get to know Mason Miller and watch his career unfold, because you're gonna be really, really good. You're already really good. But I can tell, like, you have your mindset is there.
Mhm.
And I'm just looking for, I love watching you throw.
Yeah.
So
Appreciate it, Rob. I mean, I love going out there and doing it. So I'm happy that I have a platform for, you know, people to enjoy it and watch. So it's just the best of both worlds for sure.